Welcome to the channel, everyone. Today we're stepping onto the battlefields of World War II, a conflict that reshaped the entire 20th century. We're traveling to the Eastern Front, a vast and unforgiving landscape where empires clashed. And amidst the snowdrifts and the rubble, we find ourselves at the heart of one of the most brutal confrontations in human history, the Battle of Stalingrad. Get ready to explore the gripping story of Stalingrad, the brutal encirclement that changed history. To understand the ferocity of the fighting at Stalingrad, we must first understand its importance. The city, named after the Soviet leader, straddled the mighty Volga River, a vital artery for supplies and resources flowing into the heart of the Soviet Union. For Hitler and the Nazi high command, capturing Stalingrad wasn't just about securing oil fields in the Caucasus, it was about striking a blow against the very soul of the Soviet war effort. The city's industrial capacity was significant, churning out tanks and munitions for the Red Army. But beyond the factories and the rail lines, Stalingrad represented something more profound. It was a symbol of Soviet resistance. A city that bore the name of the man who embodied the communist state. The Germans were determined to capture it, to break the back of Soviet morale, and Stalin, well aware of the symbolic weight the city carried, was equally determined to hold it. The stage was set for a titanic struggle, a battle of annihilation where neither side could afford to yield. The road to Stalingrad was paved with the shattered remnants of Operation Barbarossa, the Nazi invasion of the Soviet Union launched in June of 1941. This ambitious operation was Hitler's grand strategy to conquer the vast Soviet territories and secure the resources needed for his war machine. Hitler, blinded by his own ideology, believed in the inherent weakness of the Soviet system, convinced that a swift campaign could shatter Stalin's regime. He saw the Soviet Union as a colossus, with feet of clay ready to crumble under the weight of a well-coordinated blitzkrieg. The initial German advances were stunning in their speed and ferocity. The Wehrmacht's meticulously planned operations saw rapid gains, with entire Soviet divisions being encircled and destroyed. The Wehrmacht, the German army, seemed unstoppable, its panzer divisions cutting through Soviet lines like a hot knife through butter. The German forces advanced hundreds of miles into Soviet territory, capturing vast swathes of land and taking hundreds of thousands of prisoners. But the Soviets, though initially reeling, were not broken. The Red Army, despite suffering catastrophic losses, began to regroup and reorganize, drawing on the vast manpower reserves of the Soviet Union. They fought back with a tenacity and a ferocity that surprised the Germans, who had underestimated the sheer size of the country they had invaded and the resilience of its people. The Soviet soldiers, driven by a fierce patriotism and the brutal reality of total war, mounted fierce counterattacks. As the summer of 1941 gave way to the bitter cold of a Russian winter, the German advance began to falter. The Wehrmacht, ill-prepared for the harsh conditions, found itself bogged down in the freezing temperatures and deep snow. Supply lines were stretched thin, equipment struggled in the freezing temperatures, and the Soviets launched counterattacks that bled the Wehrmacht white. The logistical nightmare of maintaining an army in such conditions began to take its toll on the German forces. Barbarossa, the lightning war that was supposed to bring a swift victory, had failed. The German forces, once so confident of a quick triumph, now faced the grim reality of a protracted and brutal conflict. The Eastern Front had become a grinding war of attrition, a meat grinder that would consume millions of lives. The dreams of a quick victory had turned into a nightmare of endless battles, with both sides suffering immense casualties in the brutal struggle for dominance. Chapter 3. Into the Inferno. August 1942, the sweltering heat of the Russian summer beat down on the ravaged landscape, turning the ground into a scorched, unforgiving terrain. The air was thick with dust and the smell of burning, a prelude to the inferno that was about to unfold. As the German Sixth Army, a veteran force hardened by years of campaigning, reached the outskirts of Stalingrad, their confidence was palpable. They had conquered vast swathes of Europe and now set their sights on this strategic city on the Volga River. Under the command of General Friedrich Paulus, A meticulous planner known for his attention to detail, the Sixth Army unleashed a storm of steel and fire upon the city. Artillery shells rained down, creating a cacophony of destruction that echoed for miles. Luftwaffe bombers, the pride of the German Air Force, pounded Stalingrad relentlessly, reducing entire districts to rubble. The once bustling city was transformed into a nightmarish landscape of twisted metal and shattered buildings. From amidst the ruins, the Red Army fought back with a ferocity born of desperation. They were outgunned and outnumbered, but their resolve was unbreakable. Every soldier knew that the fate of their city, and indeed their nation, hung in the balance. They knew what was at stake, not just the fate of their city, but the fate of their nation. The Soviet soldiers prepared for a fight to the death, determined to defend their homeland at all costs. Every street, every building, every floor became a battleground. The urban landscape, with its labyrinth of ruins, provided ample cover for both sides, turning the city into a deadly maze. Snipers hid in the rubble, picking off German soldiers one by one. These hidden marksmen became a constant threat, their presence felt in every shadow and every corner. Tanks dueled in the streets, their shells turning buildings into tombs. The roar of engines and the thunder of cannon fire added to the chaos as these steel behemoths clashed in close quarters. The fighting was brutal, hand to hand, a maelstrom of fire and steel. Soldiers grappled in the ruins using whatever weapons they could find, from bayonets to bricks, in a desperate struggle for survival. The Volga River, once a lifeline, was now a barrier choked with the bodies of the dead and dying. Its waters ran red with blood, a grim testament to the ferocity of the battle. The Germans, though suffering heavy casualties, were making progress, slowly pushing the Soviets back towards the river. Their advance was methodical, but every step forward was paid for in blood. But they had underestimated the tenacity of their enemy, the will of the Soviet soldiers to fight for every inch of their city. The defenders of Stalingrad were not just fighting for territory, they were fighting for their very existence, and they would not yield easily. Chapter 4. Uranus Unleashed. As the leaves began to turn, signaling the end of autumn, and the first snows of winter dusted the ruins of Stalingrad, the city lay in a frozen, desolate state. The tide of the battle began to shift dramatically as the harsh winter set in. The Soviets, under the command of General Georgy Zhukov, a man renowned for his tactical brilliance, had earned Stalin's trust through his previous victories and strategic acumen. Zhukov had been meticulously planning a counteroffensive for months, a secret operation codenamed Uranus, designed to turn the tide of the war. The plan was audacious and bold, to strike not at the heart of the German forces entrenched in Stalingrad, but at their vulnerable flanks, which were held by weaker Romanian and Italian units, less prepared for a fierce Soviet assault. On November 19, 1942, Operation Uranus was unleashed with full force. Soviet tanks, spearheaded by the legendary T-34S, known for their durability and firepower, smashed through the thinly held German flanks with relentless power and precision. The Romanian and Italian troops, caught off guard and overwhelmed, were ill-equipped and lacking the will to fight in the brutal conditions of the Russian winter, crumbled under the onslaught. The German Sixth Army, deep in the ruins of Stalingrad, found itself completely encircled, trapped in a tightening noose of Soviet steel with no way out. Hitler, obsessed with capturing the city that bore his enemy's name, refused to see reason. He refused to allow General Paulus to break out and save his men. The Fuhrer believed, against all odds, that the Sixth Army could hold out, supplied by air, until a relief force could be assembled to break the Soviet encirclement. It was a fatal miscalculation, one that would lead to the eventual downfall of the German forces in Stalingrad. Chapter 5. A City of Bones. Winter tightened its grip on Stalingrad, and the city, already a landscape of rubble and ruin, became a frozen hell. The encircled German soldiers, trapped in a shrinking pocket, faced a new enemy, the Russian winter. Temperatures plummeted to unimaginable lows, turning the ground into iron and freezing the grease in their weapons. Food and ammunition ran desperately low, and the Luftwaffe, struggling to supply the Sixth Army by air, could only deliver a fraction of what was needed. Disease and starvation ravaged the ranks of the once mighty Wehrmacht. Inside the city, the remaining Soviet defenders endured their own horrors. They fought on, house by house, room by room, driven by a primal will to survive and to avenge the suffering inflicted upon their city. The Volga, frozen solid, became a lifeline for the Soviets, allowing them to ferry supplies and reinforcements across the ice. The Germans, their strength ebbing away with each passing day, launched desperate counterattacks, trying to break out of the encirclement. But the Soviets held firm, their resolve hardened by the knowledge that victory was within their grasp. A turning point. The Battle of Stalingrad, one of the longest and bloodiest battles in human history, finally came to an end in February 1943, when the remnants of the German Sixth Army surrendered. The victory at Stalingrad marked a turning point in World War II, shattering the myth of German invincibility and galvanizing the Soviet war effort. The sacrifices made on both sides were staggering, the city itself reduced to rubble. Stalingrad stands as a testament to the human cost of war, a reminder of the resilience of the human spirit in the face of unimaginable suffering. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share and subscribe to our channel for more fascinating historical stories. Don't forget to hit the bell icon to stay updated with our latest content.